It is now 7 o'clock. This meeting will come to order. So this special meeting has been called, and now I just ask everybody to vote.
If you can't hear, we're going to do our best. We're trying to work with the technology that we have. So can those in the back here? I see heads shaking up and down. Okay. First thing we're going to do is introductions. My name is Wade Bowie. I'm the county attorney. Also serve as the county counselor for Coffee County. I'm sort of going to be, I guess I'm not sort of going to be, I'm going to be the moderator of the proceeding today to help expedite things, keep it on track and moving. So today's special session was called by the commissioners, and there's sort of a formal procedure that has to be followed to see that it's done right. So in essence, I'm going to be asking each of the commissioners if they were contacted and if they agreed to this special session, with the sole topic being the Jail Justice Center project. And that's the only thing we're going to be talking about today. Now that may carry over into some other topics that may be relevant to the project, but we can't go off into too many other areas because it's specific to this topic. Introduce the people who will likely be participating other than myself. We have the chairman of the board, Tom Huguenin, Don Meets, Tim Johnson, Jesse Knight, and Bob Saresic. Those are the 5 commissioners for Coffee County. They're all here tonight. We also have the sheriff of Coffee County, Tom Johnson. We have the undersheriff, Eric Smith, somewhere.
He's right there.
He's right there. He may participate as well. And we have a special guest who may say something. He may not. The sheriff of Lynn County, and I forgot. Kevin Frank. The format of the meeting will be, I'll give a brief presentation about how we got to where we are. It's not going to have all the details. It may not have everything that everybody wants. But the benefit is that those of you who want to ask questions will have the opportunity to do so. There's a sign-in sheet, and to help keep things moving and to help keep things from sort of spiraling maybe out of control to an extent. Whoever wants to speak, there's a sign-in sheet. We'd ask that you sign in. Whoever signed in first will be the first one called up to speak. You'll come up to the podium, announce your name, what city you reside in, and then the floor is yours. You can ask, make your comments if you have questions. Your questions may be answered, they may not. You may come up with a question that may be something that those with the county we don't have the answer to. And if that's the case, we will get the answer for you. So, one of the topics and one of the things that I've noticed on the outside is why we need a new jail. What's wrong with our current jail? By a show of hands, who here has actually taken a tour of the current jail? Okay, so some have been in it, some have taken a tour. So some of you know what it looks like on the inside, some of you don't. But one of the issues is it's outdated, and the capacity, whether it be storage or for inmate population, is not what it needs to be. Now, right now, you'll see some slides. We have an issue where on a pretty frequent basis right now, we're farming out inmates to other counties because we just don't have the space in our jail. And you'll see why. The Coffee County Jail is a linear jail. In a linear jail, maybe Sheriff Johnson, can you explain what a linear jail is?
It's a hallway with cells on both sides. That's all there is to it. Straight hallway, and you got cells going down that hallway.
And the Coffee County Jail was built under Sheriff, what year? 1984. So it's been active in a jail since that time. A podular jail setup? What is an example of a modular jail setup? Under Sheriff?
So imagine that you're sitting in the center of the control, and as you look out, there's a pod that runs this way, another kind of like a slicing of pie, so that you can see both tiers from one point. One officer can see all of the pods. So it's called pod.
So in addition to, so there's an issue with safety, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, with a linear jail versus a modular jail. We also have capacity issues, which I just briefly discussed. There's also maintenance issues that maybe some of you know about, maybe some of you don't. If you toured the jail, I think they'd be pretty obvious. If you've heard or listened to commission meetings, maybe they've been obvious as well too. And then probably the most important component of why our current jail is problematic is a global safety issue, whether it be inmates, jailers, officers, which then equals the public. So Sheriff Johnson gave an example of the linear jail. Linear jail, very limited support facilities or separation of housing for classification. Sheriff Johnson, what is classification?
Classification is you have an inmate come in, whether it be an arrest for a DUI, for example. He's going to be a very low classification schedule. He's never had anything in his past. He made a mistake, drank a few too many beers, and got arrested. Where then you have someone that is a rapist, a murderer, whatever it may be, that's more serious and violent, they're higher on the classification level. So you don't want to put that simple person with a DUI or somebody that's being served 5 days because they got a DUI in with a violent criminal. You have to be able to classify inmates and put them in cells or pods with their like component when it comes to classification. That's where a lot of sheriffs and counties get sued, not taking in account those classifications. It's a safety issue for the jailers. It's a safety issue when you take them into the courtrooms for their court. It's a safety issue you have to take them to get medical because they, have got a temperature and you need to get them checked out. It's all safety concerns, not classifying people and having the ability to put them someplace to classify it.
Thank you, Sheriff. So, what you see in the picture on the screen now is on the left, that's the linear hallway where each of these cells in the Coffee County Jail, that's looking down the hallway. I don't know what direction that's looking, but on the right and left is where the cells are. Jailers, officers, inmates have to walk down that hallway. And why is that an issue, or why is that something to be concerned about? Because if you look on the right, the only way in and out of the cell is you have to have a key. And under Sheriff, why is having a key and entering into one of those doors a safety issue?
I think most people can understand the common sense of having a key on you that lets you in and out of the block. An individual that's intent on leaving the block and is going to go through you, they know that you have the key to get out.
Thank you. So capacity of the current Coffee County Jail. If Sheriff Johnson or Sheriff Rogers, who was before him, who's also in the audience tonight, had a full jail and they wanted to, they could put what they call boats. I don't know why they call them boats, but boats which are basically portable beds or portable mats onto the ground, and they can get to 26. If they're not putting portable mats or portable boats or portable mats or boats onto the ground, then the capacity of the Coffee County Jail is what, Sheriff? 18. So you'll find out why that's important here in a few minutes. In 2020, and this is an approximate figure, Coffee County paid other counties, adjacent counties, which would be either Allen County, Anderson County, or Elk County, $30,000 to house Coffee County inmates because there was not the capacity level. And why is that important? Last year was a COVID year, which meant that all efforts were made to not have people in jail. So that means the people that were in jail, in the court's opinion, or in the prosecutor's opinion, and people can agree to disagree on that, but the idea was they needed to be in jail because they posed some sort of risk to community safety. The other issue with the Coffee County Jail, and for those of you in the back, I don't know how well you can see the pictures, but on the left-hand side is the Sally Port, or what used to be the Sally Port. And what is a Sally Port? It's where law enforcement, when they have somebody in custody, they would drive their patrol vehicle into that Sally Port, which is in essence a garage. They'd shut the door, and for officer safety issues, they shut the door, and they'd be able to have control over the person they had in custody. But there's no room at the Coffee County Jail. They instead had to take the Sally Port, and the picture on the right is build storage because they had nowhere else to put certain items. So you'll see there's a stairway. The stairway, the top tier is storage, the bottom is storage, and the Sally Port is no longer a Sally Port, it's storage. So what that means is here on the right, where you can maybe see my pointer, law enforcement officers who have somebody in custody will pull to this back end of the building, and they have to physically walk somebody around and walk them in through a door, which for officers adds an added risk for officer safety. Reoccurring maintenance costs. How many here are aware that there's been incidents or times when the sewer backs up in the Coffee County Jail, which then overflows into the ceiling of dispatch and drips down into dispatch? And I see a number of people raise their hands, and they're all tied to law enforcement, so they know. But not many other people know that. And sheriff, undersheriff, is that an ongoing issue? Is it something that happens?
Well, currently, we have it stopped, but I'll tell you, the last time we had to fix it, we had to jackhammer the pipe out of the concrete in order to fix it.
Which caused us to have inmates housed someplace else because they've got 18 foot of concrete jackhammered out to get to the pipes. Again, remember this was built in '84, so it's got the old cast iron pipes, of course, now it's fixed there, but one of the pictures you'll see nice new concrete floor because we had to jackhammer the old out. Right down the center of that linear jail is where those pipes run.
So plumbing, one of the cells, and I don't know what cell it is, for a period of time has been shut down. And part of the reason why it's been shut down is because there's a plumbing issue. The plumbing issue is it leaks and floods, and then there's jailers who on a regular basis have to take a shop vac and shop vac the water out. That shouldn't be occurring. You say, well, why don't you call the plumber and have the plumber come fix the pipes? Because that's what anybody else would do. Well, the sheriff's department and the county has called multiple plumbers. They have come in, and because of the age of the facility, the piping has to be fabricated because they don't have the parts to do it.
They don't make the parts anymore.
So that cell ends up shut down, which means how many inmates would be held in that cell if it were shut down?
Two-man cell.
Two-man cell. So the cell on the right and the cell on, or the picture on the right and the picture on the left are two different views. You can't see it very well, but the picture on the left, they're standing water.
Those are the pipe chases. There's a small little metal door down that linear hallway that if an inmate floods his cell, if an inmate does anything in there, we have to get in to shut water off. Little pipe chase, you gotta go get a key, open that door, crawl in, and then this is what you're in, is a narrow little hallway to try to get in and shut water off to these cells. Modern systems obviously don't have that. They have push-button electronic systems that stuff off immediately.
And sheriff or under sheriff, how often do inmates flood the cells? Attempt to flood the cells?
Just along the door, let it fill up.
So, and that's not bad, but then it floods the other cells and you got other inmates mad because, you haven't cleaned it up. So, it happens on a regular basis. Does it happen every week? No. But you get those people in that they just want to cause problems, and so they flood their cell, take their shirts off, clothing, and shove it down the toilet and start flushing. and it closes us.
So the most important component, other than what we've already talked about, is safety. Jailer safety, officer safety, inmate safety, and I think you've heard a little bit about why the linear system is a problem. The linear system lends to liability concerns, because if I'm going to open the door with a key, and there are 6 people, or 2 people, or 1, and they're feeling froggy, it's a recipe for disaster. And Coffee County has been fortunate that that has not occurred, and I hope it never occurs, but it puts our jailers at risk, it puts our officers at risk, it puts the inmates at risk, and it puts the public at risk. Speaking of liability, one of the issues that is very important and critical to our current jail is the current safety guidelines of the jail that aren't being met. And that is with the American Correctional Association. I'm not going to go into detail. You can look that up and see. If you have more questions, I'm sure you can contact me or somebody else with the county and find out why that's an issue. PREA, P-R-E-A, the Prison Rape Elimination Act of 2012. That's an issue because we have a variety of different individuals who identify themselves different ways, and if they're put into cells with somebody who, I won't go into great detail about that, but they have rights and they have to be protected from other inmates. And that's an issue in our current setup. So we talked about all these things with our current jail, what the issues are. Why not fix it? Let's renovate it. Let's do what needs to be done. Let's spend the money, because building a new jail is too expensive. It doesn't make sense. It's actually a whole lot more expensive to renovate an existing structure than it is to build new. And maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. Hopefully I'll be able to add some tidbits that will at least make it make sense. The architect who the county hired, his name's Larry Goldberg with Goldberg and Associates. And one of the reasons why Ms. Sheriff Friend is here, he has been working with Mr. Goldberg on the Lynn County Jail, which apparently, from what he just told me, is 45% complete.
Yeah, about that.
So he has insight into that particular individual, but Mr. Goldberg, who wanted to be here, had a family issue and he couldn't, and he can get into the nuts and bolts about where these figures come from. So if you want to ask me details about 850 to 1350 per square foot, I'm not going to be able to answer that question. I'm, for lack of better wording, a parrot right now. But it's important because these are the figures that we're going off of in making decisions for the county. So 850 to 1350 per square foot for renovation, or 485 to 535 per square foot for a new justice center. It depends on how you look at it. You'll see the figure at the very bottom to renovate, 6.8 to 10.1 million dollars was the estimate. And what does that get you? If right now our capacity is 14 to 15, you get 18 to 20 beds. So you add four beds in the current jail for $10 million. 4 beds. That may help for a short period of time, but if things continue to progress the way they have since I've been here, which has been just over 2.5 years, it's not going to take long where that's woefully inadequate. One of the key questions, and some of the people here, they're here because this may be the key question for them. Where will this facility be located? Is it going to be in Burlington? Is it going to be out by the airport? Is it going to be somewhere else? And right now, we don't know. There has been no definitive decision made about the location. We're trying to figure that out. At one point in time, we thought we had a line on some property in Burlington, south of town. It's well documented. But but that didn't work out. So the county owns property out near the airport, and at least right now, the conversation is that a viable option, but that hasn't been finalized. There may be other locations within the county that may fit the blueprint better for this facility. So I don't want anybody to walk out of here and think the county has already made the decision that they're gonna put this justice center, if the public signs off on it, next to the airport, because that's not the case. Probably can't see this very well. It's just a rendering of what the footprint of the Justice Center would be. In the middle is the actual Justice Center itself, and then parking around the facility. And parking is an issue because when you have a criminal jury trial, and if anybody was a part of the murder trial that Coffee County had 2 years ago, parking was an issue. Parking was a big issue. So if you're gonna build a new facility, you wanna have parking to adequately address the people that would be coming in and participating as jurors. They don't need to park 3 blocks away, 4 blocks away. They need to be able to park in the parking lot at the courthouse. Will my taxes be raised? And this is sort of a question that is a hot topic. So the commissioners have decided that they will attempt to pay for, if this passes, 20% from reserve funds and 80% through bond financing. That's about as far as I can go. I'm not an accountant, I don't have that expertise, but that's what I can tell you right now. I know some of you may have more questions. If you have more questions and you need more information and we don't give it to you tonight, especially about this topic, write down your question, send an email, call, and we will get your answer. Did the county increase the mill levy recently? They did. Now, that's sort of an interesting conundrum, because part of the way they increased the mill levy, and I spoke to the auditor so I could try to understand exactly, because we had this revenue neutral rate hearing that's new in Kansas this year, how it works, the mechanics. The auditors don't even fully know and understand. It has some complexities, but generally speaking, the county mill levy rate is 52.308. 52.308 is the same mill levy that the county had in 2000. The additional taxes levied on the regular taxpayers are 1.492 mils. And that 1.492 mils, if you'll go back, and I don't have the exact commission meeting when that happened, but the hospital asked for some additional infrastructure money. So 1.492 mils of the 52.308 is assigned and attributed to the request the hospital made. And that figure is $1,018,321. So if you want to have a viable hospital in Coffee County, Kansas, they need to have the funds to operate. Because if you look across the state, Coffee County is sort of a unicorn right now, and many hospitals that aren't county owned either are not in operation or they operate in a different way. So just something for you to consider. Second, 1 mil on a $100,000 house is equivalent to an increase in taxes of $11 a year. The rest of the dollars being levied are due to the increase in assessed valuation from the previous tax year, the bulk of it from state assessed property. So think about that. I'm not an auditor. That's about as far into the weeds as I can go with that. But the auditor was here, talked about that. And that was at the commission meeting when talking about the budget on July 26, 2021. So I'd encourage you to go back, and some of the timestamps would be 1 hour and 36 minutes and 1 hour and 55 minutes if you're interested. So because the mill levy went up, we had to have the revenue neutral rate hearing, and we're at that 52,308. Anticipated cost to build a new freestanding justice center. We already talked about earlier the cost per square foot, how it's less than to renovate. $415 to $435 per square foot. The total project cost is estimated at $20 million. That's a big price tag. There's no denying that. And you as the citizens and taxpayers in Coffee County have to decide whether it's worth it. And I'm not trying to sell you one way or another, but you need to make that decision, but you need all the facts. And that's hopefully what you're getting right now. So the 20 million, because some will say, well, I heard it was 25. Well, it may go up to 25. We're dealing with different costs and fees and building materials and different things. It fluctuates, but offsite utility extensions and property acquisition are not accounted for in that 20 million. Why not just have the sheriff's department and the jail? That's a question. It's valid. The way it was explained to me, to move the court and the prosecutor's office and to add some auxiliary offices for defense counsel is they call those soft costs. The core costs and fees related to the project are these pods for the jail. So soft costs, you're just putting up walls, building, and the structure, and if I remember right, it's an additional $1.2 million is what I remember. I may be off a little bit, but it's nowhere near the total cost of the project. So let's say you just do the sheriff's department and you do the jail, you're at $18 million. And we'll just say that as a fair estimate. Then you have the sheriff who has to transport from wherever the location is inmates to the courthouse, which then adds another component of risk for officer safety, because anytime you transport inmates, you're at a risk. Prior to coming to Coffee County, I was in Allen County, and for a short period of time, I was in Detroit, Michigan. I can tell you, during my time there, there were 3 or 4 officers, whether they be city or county officers, killed during transports. Very dangerous. Why do you need so many beds with your jail? Why can't we just add 30 beds, have a jail that has 50 beds? We could. If that's what the voters want, then they need to talk to their commissioners and say, 80 is too many, I could live with 50. But where did this come from? So there was a criminologist who conducted a study. They're a detention specialist. That's what they specialize in. And they looked at the figures for inmates in Coffee County over a period of time, and they determined, based on the anticipated inmate population growth, that 70 to 80 beds 30 years down the road is what Coffee County would need. Now, does that assume population growth? The population could not grow at all. So you could do nothing, or you could be proactive and do something. That's your choice. So Weber and Associates was the group, detention specialist. If you request it, we have this document that I'm gonna show little snippets of. You won't be able to see it very well, but it talks about looking at the Coffee County figures. KBI statistics that reported a statewide 17.3 increase in violent crime in 2019 over a 10-year average. This is a significant statistics as it relates to jail planning. So we'll go into the next page. The next page, this is the forecast. So here we are in 2021. Average daily population is projected to be 22.26 with a maximum of 35. Sheriff or undersheriff, what's your, actually, jail administrator, Mr. French, what's the average daily population of your facility?
It fluctuates. Yeah. Every day, right now, we happen to be on the downhill side of it, population-wise, low, but it does make it up.
Have you recently been to this 22.26 average or capacity?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 2021. Let's go to 2024. The average daily population is anticipated to be 33.32 with a maximum of 53. 2028, 57.07 with a maximum of 90. I mean, you can choose to do nothing, but you need to think about, and we're investing in the future. Now, we can't shake the crystal ball and figure out what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. These are, and if you believe in statistics, and the projected male beds that will be needed would be 52, female beds 23. Podular, that's an example of a podular system. You have pods and you have a control center where you watch and can keep track of everything that's going on in those pods. And you have, with the proposal here, how many pods? Sure.
They can make whatever we want. We talked about 7 pods. The issue is this too, what you don't see here is there's no contact by officers. A control room person at 8 o'clock in the morning pushes a button, doors open, and they can come out to their day room in their pod. Each pod would have a day room. It's not going to be this big. This is a big institution that's got multiple inmates in that pod. But if we had a 12-man pod, for example, you'd have a day room where you push a button and they come out and they can have their daily activities right there. The problem that we have is we have 18 prisoners in, 9 whatever. We have to go and physically unlock a door, physically put hands on them, move them all the way down the hallway to a room that we call our day room that's got 2 benches in there, concrete benches, and a television. That is their day room, and they get 2 hours a day. Here, they've got their television, they can work on the kiosk and send loved ones email or get on there and do stuff. That's what we don't have.
And you may think, why do they have a TV? Why do they get to do some of these things? Well, they may be inmates, but the majority of them are accused. So they haven't been convicted of anything. They may be held for high-level crimes. I don't know how many people here know that almost 2 years ago, there was an incident at the Burlington Pizza Hut where somebody put a gun to the manager's head with a ski mask to take the money bag at the end of the shift. How many here knew that? Very few. Things that happen in Coffee County, a lot of citizens don't know, and if we're doing our jobs right, you don't know, because we are taking care of the community safety, offender accountability. That individual went to prison, which is where they should have gone, and they are a registered violent offender for the next 15 years once they get out. This is a rendering of the pod system, and you probably can't see it very well, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pods in this rendering. Now, this picture has to do with, you have someone sitting in a control center, and they're the ones who open the cells. They're the ones who, so to speak, have the key to open everything within this podular system. And why that's important is they can shut down cells if there's an issue with the officer or an inmate or a jailer. They can isolate that area and take control of it, and it's not the safety issue that a linear system is.
They have control of water, air, there's airtight doors. They can shut down water with the push of a button, control airflow, whether there's a positive or negative pressure inside there. All done inside an enclosed, glassed in, bulletproof glass where nobody can touch them, nobody can get to them.
So the next several pictures that I'm going to show you, they're all pictures, they're all renderings, are of what the anticipated at the Justice Center would be built, that it's going to look like an office building. You're not going to have guards on the roof, razor wire, fences, people with machine guns patrolling the grounds. That's El Dorado, that's a prison. This is a jail and a Justice Center. There's a huge difference. So front and back, you can probably tell the elevated area is where that pod system would be, the 2-tier, and it would go all the way around the structure. You'd have the jail, or the jail, the sheriff, the prosecutor, the court system, court services. You have evidence, you have everything packaged into one building. So just some other renderings. You see here, Coffee County Justice Center. On this side would be the Sheriff's Department. This is the other side, which is the Sheriff's Department. The back side, which is the 2-tiered where the jail itself would physically be. So now it's your turn. You have a little more information, maybe you don't feel like you have enough information, or you just have some questions. If you sign into the sheet, you get, the first person who signed in gets to come up first and say whatever they're. So, Mr. Ditto, the floor is yours.
Hi, guys. No most of you been around here for a little while. I just have a few questions. Did the city, is there anywhere in the bylaws that allows you guys not to build that in the city of Burlington? I know Osage County, I think that's the issue they had up there.
I believe that's the question Mr. Johnson can answer, am I correct?
I didn't hear your question, I'm sorry.
Is there something in the bylaws that won't allow Burlington, the city of Burlington, to sell property for you guys to have this? For instance, no.
Not that I'm aware
So I
of.
know Osage County does. That's why I didn't pass up there or something. Something's going on, I just heard. But, no, I mean, honestly, guys, I don't, if the voters prove it, I'm fine with it. My deal is location. You know, I live on 20th Road, new house, and, where it looks like the property line is, it might be just south of me. So, you know, I'm concerned about the shooting range. I don't want to listen to shooting all the time. You know, traffic, you know, it's gonna be high traffic. There's 4 fairly new houses right there in that area. You know, I don't want it to depreciate my property, even though I'll probably be one of the safest properties around, you know, but, no, that's just my concern. If, you know, if the voters prove it, I just hope you consider where, you know, where it's most not gonna affect this customer, you know, our residents, you know. And that's really all I got.
And your name is, sir?
Yeah, Chad Ditto.
Chad?
Yeah. I called you years ago and hunted on your place.
I thought you looked familiar. I'll catch you outside, buddy.
No, that's all I got.
No, that would be the hardest part, Chad, trying to find a place to build it that's not gonna offend someone, I guess.
Right.
Or like, oop, I would not, sorry. That would be the hardest part, to find a place to build it that somebody's gonna feel like they don't want it in their backyard. That's gonna be the hardest part to sell. I'm confident of that. But
And it's gotta be somewhere.
Well, exactly, no, that's right, and I don't know if you guys realize, but there is three-phase over there, the real electric. I work for Evergy, I actually helped put in your guys' service over at your place. But no, I mean, kilowatt, you guys are gonna pay probably 20 to 30% higher in utilities out there. I'm just telling you right now. That's a lot of cost,
I can understand that.
so. But no, that's all I got, but thank you guys for having a special meeting, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Next on the list is Terry Rowe.
Glad you had this meeting for everybody to get information. Addressing the thing that just was brought up, the airport was taken away from landowners to build the airport. If you have property out here in Coffee County, I'm not saying we need to build it or not, but if you have property out here that's in the industrial area, you can take it away from the city as easy as you take it away from us.
What do you mean by taking away? I'm new, so you can explain that, how it got taken away.
Eminent domain.
It was done by eminent domain out there?
Right.
Okay.
So that's what was used at the airport?
My father-in-law, well, ex-father-in-law did not want to sell. He was forced into selling. They wanted to give him what he paid for 40 years ago, but he did get a little more than that eventually. That was before your time.
Not only, let me say a little something, not only if a person comes in and strong arms the city for the property, the zoning administration, zoning board for the city can also shut you down and make loopholes to where you cannot build it at said location. So it's not only the city, the mayor or the city council, you gotta go through steps, and they can also shut you down.
That'd be just like taking it away from me. I could go through steps to help you, keep you from taking it away from me. And eventually,
It would be through the zoning side.
eventually you win because we're paying for it.
And I hate to interrupt, but I don't want the questions and some of the comments, because what the city does or does not do and what their zoning regulations are right questions for the city council, but the county commissioners probably aren't the best ones to answer that, out of all fairness to the city.
That was just a,
Sure.
you know, if you're gonna take it from somebody and you got a property that's, how much has Coffee County been paid by other counties for housing prisoners or inmates?
That would be a Sheriff Johnson.
I had no idea off the top of my head. Have to look and see after.
That's a two-way street, right? We pay them and they pay us.
Absolutely.
Okay. We keep our jail full.
Pardon me?
We keep our jail full, sort of.
No, we don't, I mean, we don't actively ask for other counties to bring people here. For example, right now, we're holding inmate for Lyon County. They've got a murder case going on over there, and he needs 3 individuals separated. He's kept some of my prisoners. He called me and asked if I could house his prisoner, single prisoner. I told him to bring it on over. So right now, I think we're 3 or 4 free. I was giving Troy, my patrol supervisor, a hard time. I got to work day shift tomorrow. We're shorthanded. And I said, how many do I got to have to fill it up tomorrow? So I know that we have 3 or 4 empty cells, bed spaces. But we don't keep it full on a regular basis because, again, I have to deal with what happens here every day in Coffee County.
You need someplace to put somebody if you had.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wade, you said something about, we have keys to get in the doors and stuff. Numerous businesses out here have updated and put electronic access from a general location. You can do that to the jail as easy as.
So My understanding is to get the jail up to standards, it's maybe a little more complicated than just the keys. The price tag that we were told to get it updated to meet what current law requires is between 6.8 and $10 million. And what that all entails, and we have to have the architect here so we can explain that. I don't know if that's something that maybe.
The key issue is not our problem, sir. It's the water, it's the old plumbing, it's the linear system, it's the totality of the circumstances, not just the keys. Can we get some company to come in and make keys? Maybe. But we're just putting a Band-Aid on something that, again, if we put a push button system, it's not set up where one person's push the button, let somebody in. You'd have to have somebody walk out and say, open cell 3, and then send somebody, tell them, you know, you still gotta have hands on.
You showed a room where you could get 12 inmates together. As soon as one of them gets mad at the other one, you're gonna be back in there.
Absolutely. You're never gonna get away from putting hands on people, but you don't deal with them multiple times a day, move them just from their cells to the doctor's office, their cells to rec, or their cells to go get commissary. That's the whole pod system.
Is there gonna be medical facilities on site so you don't have to come to the hospital, transport them back and forth?
We're hoping that that's part of the process, is that we have a company called Advanced Medical that is a nationwide company that provides that service. We've talked to them. They gave us some bids. I think it was $160,000, give or take. Don't hold me to it, one of those papers in front of me. That would provide 2 RNs and a doctor or PA, whatever it was, that would have staff right there, that if there's a problem, when we bring every inmate in, they have to be cleared medically. And so if they have a problem, somebody falls off a bunk, somebody sprains their ankle, if it's during 8 to 5, we can get them to the clinic, or we can have Lindsay Pay, our health nurse, come up and look at it. But if it's something serious, somebody's having heart palpitations or whatever, then we gotta call an ambulance, bring them in, possibly put them in a patrol car, because depending on how they're classified, they take them to the hospital, and then we have to have somebody set on them 24 hours or however long they're there. Having the medical system and a medical pod in your new system in this project, you don't have those issues because your medical is right there.
So if I have a medical issue that is millions of dollars, I can go out and assault you, you put me in prison, and then the taxpayers pay for that.
Prison and jail is 2 different things.
How long do you keep people in your jail?
I can keep them no longer than 12 months. 1 year is the most we can keep somebody in the jail.
And you had, okay, I looked that up and I realized it was a year, and I'm looking at this facility. I understand it's phase 1 and you're looking at high security areas also. Is that gonna phase 2 and 3?
I don't know what you
It's
mean by
being built, what I understood, it's being built so you could add on to it.
Absolutely. In 30 or 40 years from now, if we have the space, if we had the land, let's say we put this on 3 acres, it's gonna be so tight, you couldn't add on parking space, you couldn't add on another building for whatever. The whole idea that I focused on the ground south is there was 20 acres there. And to be able to have that in 20 years, you wouldn't have to build a new facility. You could bring more pods in and build more jail space. If in 30 years from now, that's what we have. The area down south, or any land that we have, if we have enough land there, it has room for expansion, because right now we don't at the courthouse. This $10 million that we're talking about that's gonna fix our jail is going to eliminate a courtroom, the judge's chambers, part of the district court, to be able to make those extra 4 beds. So we're for $10 million, yeah, we're gonna get 4 beds. If that's what the taxpayers want, believe me, I'll enjoy it, because the liability is still there. But you're gonna lose so much. We don't have space the way it is now in the courthouse. This is not gonna fix anything for space. We heard somebody else in, and I'm gonna say names, and they're being put in a closet, literally, because there's no more space in the courthouse. Moving us away would give the courthouse the space for the courts, the sheriff's office and jail, you have the district court, the judges and the courtrooms. They could have that to expand, to make more office space. We do not have any more space, folks. Please come look at it. Come down and see stuff piled on top of desks. Look at our jail bay. We used to be able to pull them in the Sally Port. There's no more space, folks. Sorry, sir, I rambled there.
Yes, fine. They might want to know. Number of people you'll have to employ besides the cost of the jail and the cost of maintaining the inmates, or I guess you call them inmates, their customers. Do you think it's going to cost the county more taxes? I haven't done the figures, I'm sure.
So what I hope to do is this, sir, do I know that if this was built tomorrow and the keys were handed over to me, could I have 78 inmates in Coffee Can to fill this? No, I have 18 now. So what do you do with those extra beds? Then you ask Lynn County, Osage County, Allen County, whatever. I've got some open bed space. I'll house some of your inmates if you want. And believe me, there's people that already called here, heard we were doing this, thought we were far along that we were, and said, the day you get the keys, you call us, we'll bring you some inmates. So what you do is you house out what we talked about before is 36 beds. If I brought in 36 outside county prisoners, I could make about $550,000 to help pay back this bond and help pay back the money that the taxpayers have used.
I can add to that and tell you that I pay over $300,000 a year in farm out fees at our facility now.
When you farm someone out, it's your responsibility for the medical and all that.
That's correct.
So we wouldn't be responsibility for someone coming in here.
No, sir, we are not. What I like telling people is this: all this is a motel, folks. We farm people in, and when their court date comes up, that agency comes back and gets them and takes them to court. When their sentence is done, they're back home. We're not bringing people here and saying, okay, your court date's done, turn them loose and let them go, build houses here. I mean, they're going back to all we are is Motel 6. Lights on for you, come stay, and then when you leave, you go back home.
My dad, when they're building the Minuteman missiles, pulled in Pine Bluffs, Wyoming, wintertime, went to the jail, asked the jailer if he could stay in the jail. They allowed him to. His partner said, I've been in jail, I don't think I'm going to stay there. He stayed in the car, car.
I'm gonna ask you, what he was getting at, if we have a Lynn County prisoner brought in, the medical expenses go back to Lynn County.
Correct.
We don't handle that.
Right. That's correct statement. That's the county's responsibility where he's from.
Mr. Romick, I don't want to interrupt. There's
Several more.
We got some people.
nine more people, and with respect to everybody's time.
I have one last comment.
Okay. One more question.
In 78, prisoner from Missouri, the personnel over there quit and moved to Colorado to get away from, it wasn't the inmate issues, it was the people running the jail issue, the pyramid they built over in Missouri. They gave all that up, sold their house, everything, moved away from all that. Is this another pyramid, build a lot of people, get everybody's buddy in there?
I don't understand that question, sir.
He worked in prison, and the issues, he said the issues weren't the prisoners, it was everybody he worked with. It's just like Wolf Creek, it's not the electricity we produce, it's management and all the hierarchy of, but.
Okay, I'm sorry, I still don't understand that.
All right,
Let's move on. Thank you.
Next on the list is Mr. Tim Austin.
Good evening.
I guess Tom, my thing is rebuttal to what you just said about farming out all those beds. If that was the case, I don't know why we didn't have Anderson County here. They just had a new jail. I'd like to see how much money they're making.
I built it for them, sir. At $300,000 a year, that's what I paid them.
So Anderson County's making money.
They've been making a lot of money off me when we
Well, see, I
announced we
mean,
were gonna build.
We're gonna build one, Osage County's gonna build one,
I'm not
Anderson
gonna
County
argue with
just,
you, I'm gonna tell you what I paid them.
yeah, I'm just telling you that after so many fingers getting the pie, there's not any pie left. I don't know, I mean, we can say 80 beds and we're gonna have so many farmed out, but once we build a jail and once Osage County builds a jail, how much is all that revenue that he's bragging about is gonna go back in the coffers is not going back in the coffers. I mean, we've heard a lot of this stuff influx, and these beds are gonna make us this much money. That's a pipe dream that we're gonna be making money hand over fist. If it was the case that we made all this money, people would be building them everywhere.
They are.
They are building everything.
So let
And
me,
I don't think anybody got a crystal ball on that.
let me say this, okay, so right now, with the jail that I have, my budget for the jail alone is like $640,000. That's what it costs me to run that jail and keep inmates there. So again, this center may cost $20 million. That's not all me. I mean, there's the courtrooms, there's the judges, there's the prosecutor's office. This 25 million is not a $25 million jail. It's a $25 million judicial center to better the community. I'm just saying that somebody's been to jail. If I can make money, whether I make $100,000 or $500,000, and it costs me only $590 to build what I'm having now, that money can just at least go back. At least I can say, I mean, I'll tell you right now, this is a public forum. I'll guarantee you 36 or 40 beds, and whatever I make out of those 40 beds, I'll give back to the county. I'm not here to make a profit. I'm just here to make sure I have
All
a
I'm
safe
saying is,
jail.
if it's goose that laid the golden egg, then we don't need to borrow $25 million. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Mr. Roger Hoyt.
Use my legal name, Roger. Y'all know if I can. Hi, guys, Roger Hoyt, Burlington, appreciate it. You guys mostly know me, I'm on a lot of boards in Coffee County, transportation, museum and stuff. And I understand that the money that the county has set back aside, there's multiple times entities that come to the county asking to use this special fund that's set back, and we appreciate everything you've done. My understanding, the way I'm reading it, and I've got the other proposal, the original proposal with the money. Mine, I want to have an honest discussion about money. I'm not here to yes or no to the jail. I mean, I know most of the guys. I know Ed Taylor's been a friend of mine for years. He told me the situation. So that's not what I'm hearing. It's about money, true money. And I want it to be honest. Is it my understanding that the intent is not to raise mill levy for this?
Correct.
Okay, that is the intent. So I think that's a false narrative, because the money right now is being levied on the county taxpayer as it is right now. But, so I'm just gonna use some numbers from your guys' stuff. I mean, this is not something I've made up. The original, we have the budget for the jail, I understand that. So currently, the proposal to basically net even with the jail by farming out of prisoners is roughly 36 people, makes you about 500,000, plus your new people coming in, so that net revenue's even, roughly, with what we're already being levied for taxes. No problem with that. My problem is the $1.2 million payment on a bond fund for the next 35 years. Your numbers, not mine.
35 years?
That's what this original tax proposal from the architect was.
Yeah. Those numbers have changed up.
Okay, if they've changed, that's fine, but whatever that number happens to be, we're gonna, for however long.
Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was before financing was actually,
Okay, look into,
studied in a whole, if you will.
right,
And actually determine exactly how we're gonna finance it. The exact financing will be, financing 80% of this facility and using 20%.
of money that's already been levied against the taxpayer.
Well, no.
The taxpayer would pay,
Out of
already
our,
pay that.
in our,
Yeah.
out of our
It's in
reserve
our fund,
fund.
in the
Yes.
fund, the reserve
Yes.
fund, I understand.
Yes.
So what is roughly the payment going to be on the 80%?
The actual cost on the interest will be over a 10-year period, approximately 1.7, 1.8.
of interest?
Yes.
Okay, so the payment still has to be paid for. I mean, we're not talking about the payment. That's
Well,
still-
it would be
It's
hard
still
to
gonna come out of the
determine,
reserve fund, I mean, I'm
correct, but it'd be hard to determine the payment if we really don't know what it costs.
I understand, no, I understand that fully. I mean, I'm just saying that we have to consider that payment. We still have to pay for this $20 million.
Correct.
Somehow. And it's gonna be with taxpayer money, whether it's levied or not. It's okay, again, from being on the rec board, being on these other boards, I understand, this is great in an economy that our property values are going up. If our property values start going down, obviously, we're gonna have to go more mill levy to pay this payment back if we don't have the reserve fund. I just want the county to know, or the people to know, it's tax dollar revenue is paying. Whether you levy additional money or not, you're taking this extra payment from the reserve fund to pay this payment. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
so, I mean, that's all I'm looking at. And the other thing is, and it came up through, Wade's, presentation, in 10 years, they're expecting that if things go, we would be fully staffed, or our jail would be fully used by our own people.
The average daily
Yeah, right,
population.
the average daily population. So therefore, you cannot farm out those beds. So we just lost that $500,000 of revenue that you were talking about. So again, that's additional tax money that's going to have to make that up, if those numbers proceed. I just want a true conversation on it.
Correct, but that would be the reason for occupying enough land where.
Possible more expansion.
You would have to do expansion to help offset those costs.
I have no skin in the game one way or the other. I just want dollars.
And hopefully, as that grows, our county grows in houses.
If you could build more space, then you have more people. I understand it, but I'd say if that doesn't happen, and we're using up our spaces ourselves, we're not getting our farm in money. But again, that would be a future burden.
And that's a crystal ball question.
Exactly, right, exactly. That's why I say, I'm a numbers guy, y'all know me as a numbers guy, I don't want to make anybody mad one way or the other. I just want it from a number standpoint, people to understand where the money's coming from.
Yeah, Kent, your questions are very good, like I said, the crystal ball.
Yeah.
A little bit on down the road to be a crystal ball. You know, we're proposing to use 20% out of the reserve fund. And if our evaluations continue to stay at the level it is, and hopefully they will, continue to stay at the level they are, you know, they should be enough funds to go ahead and service that debt over a 10-year period.
Exactly.
10-year period, you're talking about $2 million a year in principal. Of course, amortization, it figures out a little different.
You understand, you know that person, but
But you're able to configure 2 million, but over the 10-year period, at the interest rate that's been talked about, then not necessarily negotiated, but then it talked about at a very good rate.
Right.
The interest over a 10-year period for that 20 million that chart shows
right.
is only 1.8 million just for the interest.
Exactly. It comes back. I understand that. I just knowing that, you know, it's too tax dollar, even though we're not raising anything, if something happens, our valuations drop, or something happens, now we don't have that reserve fund money to help that. Again, crystal ball.
I agree with that.
So
As long as we all work together for economic development as well.
Right.
We can.
We get some industry and then.
We get some industry in here and we got.
I agree with you.
Business is getting ready to roll.
This was just a numbers conversation, is all I have, guys. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Next on the list is Mr. Alan Barrett.
Is this being big?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is that big moved over there? I used to have my back this way. One way or the other.
So the camera's right here. It's being streamed live on YouTube right now.
Yeah. As long as everybody can see me. Crowd and the commissioner. Yeah, this ought to go less than 30 minutes.
You have 10, Alan. You have 10.
You want me to? You want to share some stuff? No, that's okay. First of all, I want to thank Wade and the commissioners and everybody that had a hand in putting this together. I think this is great to have a meeting like this, and I just wanted to pass that along. I kind of wanted to start off with, I promised my wife I wouldn't say anything about the 1988
landowners meeting with the airport commission and the county commission. But I see my wife's sister's here, so I'll probably get reported.
Not to mention your life. Not to
Oh.
mention your life.
Yeah, she's not. In the negotiations with the airport were kind of a fiasco, to say the least. Transparency was zero. We had an airport commission that we was negotiating with, and the county commissioners turned it over to the airport commissioners to make the decision and buy the land and all that. But they did not compute or communicate. And it's very embarrassing at times for them and us. But one thing that came out of the negotiation for the property up there, which is nowhere in writing, but it's been brought up 2 or 3 times since they purchased that land in 1988. That during negotiations, it was brought out. We said Mr. Smith, Steve Smith, was the attorney, and he had just sold his property out here for like $1,500 an acre for Tricon. And we asked why ours wasn't worth the same amount, because it was going to be for industry. And he said, no, it's strictly for airport business, anything pertaining to air transportation. And so that was, at the time they built the AST, Aviation Simulation Technologies, I went to the planning meeting, and you know, I was convinced the gal that was part of air trade. So we did end up making a agreement on property price. It wasn't what we wanted. It was probably about 20% what it would bring now, but there again, I promise not to say anything about this. The last time I talked to a county official about this was when they was thinking about putting industry up there. And there again, I objected, and they said, well, they didn't think there's any worry because it was going to cost too much for infrastructure. And so we kind of left it at that. And well, I guess I want to get down to what I think. And in my opinion, the courthouse needs to be in the county seat. That would be within the city limits or adjacent to the city limits of Burlington. I mean, you got all the other emergency services here. You got police department, fire department, medical, emergency preparedness. And I really wonder, kind of the way history has been going, if the city of Burlington wants to see growth. It just seems like they're kind of spinning their wheels. And I want to read their mission statement. We, representatives and employees of Burlington, collectively agree that our mission is to do what is best for the city of Burlington. We do not work for or represent any special interest group. We believe that integrity is the backbone of decision-making and loyalty to the community at paramount. Our ultimate goal is to improve the city's quality of life by making informed decisions using resources intelligently and pursuing innovative ideas to ensure a better tomorrow. To reach these ends, we shall work as a team, trust in one another, and listen to the people we represent. Nowhere in here does it say that they ignore whatever business comes before them in a council meeting, which is kind of my opinion of what's happening. And I would ask any Burlington resident or property owner to start attending the council meetings to give your input to the city, because I think it needs to be in the city of Burlington. Also had on here, I was gonna read the county mission statement, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm hoping that you will coordinate with the airport board and let them know what's happening out there. If, even in the planning stages, and especially during construction, if it ends up that way, which I hope it don't. I assume that you're gonna do a feasibility study. There's a lot of, about the only thing out there that I know is gonna handle this type of situation is the electric. The water, my water pressure, I live just across the highway from the airport. I don't even use the regulator on the meter because the pressure's so bad. And then there's the sewer. It's gonna take some kind of sewer. I don't know if it's a lagoon system or what you're gonna use. Anyhow, it just kind of gets down to my actual presentation, I guess, is I'm dead set sold that it ought to be in the city of Burlington. That's our county seat, and that's where it should be. And then I hope that the commissioners, whatever they do, will be good stewards of our money and make sure it's spent wisely. That's all I have.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
There is a study out there at the airport.
Excuse me?
There is a study going on, has been going on for a few years.
Okay.
For the airport area,
I
as far
figured
as
as well.
development of that area.
Yeah.
And not prior to the jail thing, it had nothing to do with the jail, but it has been going on. And I would agree with you, it should be in the city.
Okay.
I would like to see that myself, but if they're not for it, then we have to do something.
Thank you.
Next up is Matt Barrett.
Well, you can tell we talked a little bit. I'm Matt Barrett. I live north of the airport, 1 mile. So I'm in the same area. Been Barrett property for 5 generations, 6 generations out there. And obviously you can tell we've had conversations. He pretty much stole all my thunder, I can say. But I did go in yesterday and the undersheriff, county attorney, they've been great to talk to. They're very open. People coming in and touring the facility and giving any information that they have. And that's what I was looking for, was facts. I was starting to hear a lot of rumors. I was looking for facts. You know, what's really going on here? Had somebody knock on my door Saturday morning with some information. I'm like, it was new to me. So I do encourage everyone here, like it's been said, go tour the facility. It's not adequate. I agree with that. Again, 100%, it needs to be in the county seat. I believe you get all your meals from the hospital.
Mhm.
Get all your meals from the hospital. I believe the city of Burlington uses your facility.
Absolutely.
So if they transport somebody out 8 miles towards my house, they're gonna be shorthanded here possibly. I think the city of Burlington needs to bend over backwards and do whatever they can to keep this in or adjacent to, as said, to the city of Burlington. I don't think our county seat should end up being Cobb County Airport out in that area. I know, I hate to see the county and the city get into a big argument. I don't know what happened with the south end. It sounded like it was kind of a done deal at one point and then it just kind of fell apart. I don't know all the facts. It'd be kind of interesting to know how that all went down and played out. I don't know if we'll ever know as citizens what happened. But, you know, that sounds like the most logical place for it to go. And hopefully the city and county can get back on the same page and work something out. And I agree that, and I'm a taxpayer in Burlington. I own properties in Burlington, real properties. So I feel like I have a little say in city council meetings. So I'll probably start showing up to some of those. And just like my father said, I think anybody that has property or lives in Burlington needs to do the same. If they feel the same way, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. They don't have to agree. That's what's great. We don't have to agree with each other. We can all have different opinions. I mean, if this thing was going in at 75 and 58 down there, I would still have a problem with it, even though it's not right next door to my house, just because I feel like it belongs here in Burlington. We have a county seat. The courthouse can end up needing work at some point. The rest of the courthouse, it's getting pretty old. You know, what happens if we, you know, this county decides they really want to just strong arm and play this game with the city, and they move the clerk's office and the treasurer's office and all the other offices out there, and they leave the city sitting there with an empty building, another empty building. And we've all seen how that goes sometimes with all the empty buildings in the city. A lot of complaining about that. You know, downtown, different things. So I don't want to see the city and the county get into that, for lack of a better word, sorry, we're in a public meeting, but a pissing contest over this. But it would sure be nice to see the two sides sit down and come up with an agreement. You know, maybe the south end, the industrial park, is out, but sit down and see if maybe there's somewhere else. I thought of a couple places right off the bat, and I'm not going to name those out because obviously probably will make somebody mad no matter where it goes. Nobody really wants to sit next to the.
That's a true statement right there.
Yeah, it's going to make somebody upset no matter where it ends up. But obviously, it makes the most sense to be right here in Burlington, and that's kind of. And then that was my main point. And I do, after touring it yesterday, and I was a police reserve. I was on the police department. Oh, Eric, what did we decide? 25 years ago.
That's a long time ago.
Long time ago. It's changed a lot in 25 years since I was in there. So it's definitely not as new as it was then. It needs a lot of work. It really does. I'm 100% supportive of the sheriff and the undersheriff taking on this task. Location. That's my big thing. Go tour the facility. If you think that you can just go in and fix it up, there's a lot of fixing up to do there. And I didn't know that before. And that's what I was looking for. A lot of people saw my Facebook post out there. I was looking for facts. I wanted information. It kind of just hit me upside the head. So that's why I put that out there. And then I was getting a lot of information. Not all of it's true on Facebook. You can't believe everything you see on the internet. Even me, I was calling it a prison because I really didn't know what the difference between a jail and a prison was. You know, where does it switch over from a jail to a prison? Well, you got the 12-month holding period. I didn't want a 10-foot fence with razor wires looking out my back door. I also don't want 150 by 150 crap pond looking out my back door either for the lagoon. I don't know what that's going to take. But anyway, yeah, you're not going to make, somebody's going to be unhappy no matter what, but it only makes sense to keep it here in our county seat. And I think it was Leroy at one time, but it's not anymore. It's Burlington. So let's keep it here in Burlington where it belongs, and it makes the most sense. Our meals come from the hospital. The city PD uses it. All the other county entities are here. So my main point, keep it here in Burlington. Tour the facility. They are more than happy to, trust me, they are more than happy to take you for a tour on that facility. I was very impressed and thankful the way I was treated when I went in there and spoke with everybody I spoke to, and I appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Motel 6.
Next is Dave Neufeld.
Good evening. I'm David Neufeld. I live out there between Sharp and Hall Summit. And I'd like to talk about two things tonight. First of all, I'd like to address the validity of this study done by Weber and Associates that determined that we need this larger facility. And second, I'd like to discuss some of the issues involved in putting the facility in a non-central location, much as others have before me. First of all, is this jail study valid? My county attorney put it up on the screen a while ago, so you had a chance to look at some of the numbers, but without looking into the numbers, it's hard to say how good it is. First of all, it projects a need for an average of 75 beds by 2030. But to do this, it uses a 14% increase in actual usage from 2018 to 2019, and it ignores a large decrease from 2017 to 2019. In other words, it cherry picks one data point to get that trend. And one data point does not make a trend. It can't. Yet that's what they've done. That's a major flaw in this study. If we look at other information that's available that gives us a broader scope, one thing that I looked at was the Kansas Sentencing Commission that projects what happens to the prison population. And that's different than jails, I'll give you that. And yet, because the prisons rely on a pipeline of people coming through the jails to get their numbers, it's somewhat representative. And that study shows that there's been a decrease in prison admissions of 22% in the last year, and some 46% in the last 5 years. And they go on to say that in the next 10 years, they expect about a 5% decrease in prison population. In other words, they're not seeing a big increase in prison population. Why would we have a big increase in the jail population in a county that I think we're all aware is losing population, and in a society where more and more the sentencing of people to jail is being limited to those people that are a danger to society? And I think our county attorney is already doing a lot of that, about as much as he can. He's keeping people out of jail if it's safe to do so. But I'd ask you to go ahead and take a look at those state prison projections and ask, why would we need 75 beds? Or fewer beds will be suffice. And likewise, look at we talked about obtaining some funds from renting cells out to other counties. Well, there's been new jails built, one going in Lynn. Bourbon County built one with, 74 beds. Miami County built one with 96 beds. In other words, there's somewhat of an overcapacity of cell space that we'll be looking at soon. And consequently, there'll be fewer opportunities to rent spaces to prisoners. The second thing I want to look at is the wisdom of locating this in a non-central location. First of all, even though we may not need a large facility, I think that we're all in agreement the present facility has a lot of issues that probably can't be remediated in the existing location. A new facility is needed. And the county attorney went into the safety issues involved and why we can't really upgrade the present building, so I won't do that. But I would ask the commissioners whether they've considered a number of the issues associated with building a facility outside the central location in or near Burlington. First of all, how many additional county employees will be needed? You looked at that? And what's the estimated annual operations and maintenance costs, both if it's at Burlington and if it's outside in the county somewhere? Keep in mind that rural electric rates are a whole lot higher than Burlington rates, a lot higher. And natural gas may not be available, you know. If you're heating with electricity, that's even more expensive. And then the logistics would change considerably. There still has to be a lot of traffic between Burlington and the facility. Either you keep getting the food from the hospital, or you incorporate a good-sized kitchen in it. Is that the intent, to build a kitchen in it?
If we build 78 bed facility or 80 beds, wherever you want to say, kitchen space, laundry and everything else is incorporated in this.
So then that's added employees, more cooks, and less income for the hospital, which we're already subsidizing quite a bit. In my mind, that's a downside. The other thing is how, if we build it in the northern part of the county, how will that affect the law enforcement response time to Southern Coffee County? I know full well that the deputies don't just hang out at the sheriff's office, yet that it would be kind of the area that a lot of them would come from. When the facilities in the central part of the county, they can quickly get to virtually any part of the county if there's an emergency. But if it's in the northern part of the county, that changes things. One other thing is the FAA has pretty strict limits on how high antennas can be near an airport. Have you looked at that?
We have, sir.
Okay, so that's not an issue. But I would request that other options be placed on the ballot this November, so it's not all or nothing. You know, we can get better solutions, a smaller facility that could be added onto if it was needed eventually in a central location would get a lot more votes than something that's out remote from Burlington. It'd also be helpful to visit with commissioners from other counties that have built facilities like this far away from the county seat, just to see what kind of issues they have faced. Have you done that?
I've visited with other commissioners from other counties, but nobody's had an issue of not building within their county seat.
Okay.
But the ones that I've spoke with.
That's all I've got. And I really question the validity of the study, and I certainly question moving it away from the central part of the county.
Thanks, sir.
David.
Thanks, sir. Next on the list is retired Sheriff Randy Rogers.
Well, I think everybody probably knows where I stand on it. I wholeheartedly support a new jail. A couple things I just bring up is, I made some notes here. On the study, as far as with the Kansas Sentencing Commission and the prison versus county jails, you can't really use that as a comparison because the state has actually diverted a lot of the state prison sentences to be served in the county jail. So that's actually going from putting people in the state prison to diverting it to a county jail sentence. So instead of giving them 2 years in prison, they now made it a crime in which they can be held in the county jail to serve a sentence in the county jail of 12 months. So used to, a county jail was only for misdemeanors to be, convicted misdemeanors of a crime, and all felonies went to prison. That's no longer the case. That's changed to where there are certain felony crimes that the legislature has changed in which you serve your sentence in the county jail. Sheriff's been fighting that for years, and Department of Corrections gets off the hooks. That's how their numbers are down, but county jails, their numbers are going up. The other thing that, from my perspective, is when the county says 75 to 80 beds, in my mind, the thing that maybe needs to be relayed out there is may not be 75, 80 people in all those beds, but due to classification, due to females versus males, you got to keep them separated. They can't have sight or sound contact. The other thing is when you have co-defendants aren't supposed to be housed together. So that's the reason for the multiple pod system. So when you're talking 75 to 80 beds, you're talking about that gives you the versatility of having co-defendants in separate pods so that they can't communicate, defense, things like that that's required. by law. So you may have 80 bunks there, but you may only be housing 50, but because you've got them diversified in multiple pods, that gives the sheriff the ability to properly house these inmates and meet the legal requirements. So probably not gonna have 75, 80 people's butts in the bunks, but it gives the sheriff that ability to have the right classification. The question I would have though, and I support it being in Burlington, 100%, makes sense. The city police department is the only full-time law enforcement agency besides the county sheriff. That means when they arrest somebody, they're gonna have to drive how many miles and leave the city unprotected. If a crime is in progress, then that increases liability for the city because that officer's gonna turn the lights and sirens on, and down the highway he goes at 120 miles an hour, coming back to Burlington, something bad's gonna happen. And it just doesn't make sense for the county sheriff to arrest somebody in Leroy and have to drive all the way up to the airport with a prisoner too, because that's tying the deputy up. So it was a no-brainer when we started this, and I still say it's a no-brainer. I intend to attend the city council meeting to ask questions. I think questions need to be answered as to what stopped the process. Publicly, I've not heard it or seen anything as to why the process stopped, why it wasn't addressed at the city council meeting. I think as a citizen, we have the right to know.
When is the next meeting?
I don't know, when is the next city council meeting, Mary?
Next Wednesday.
Week from Wednesday. Okay. So my question is more to do with the funding side of it. How did you guys determine what percentage of reserves to use and how do, 20% reserves and then 80% funding? Is that based off of numbers? I'm not a numbers guy. I just don't know what we have in reserves. Is it possible to reduce that debt to use a larger amount of reserves and finance less? I don't know.
It was, if I can answer it, we were presented a cost estimate of, let's say 30 million, just using it as a number.
Okay.
Only.
Okay.
And based off the bond attorney that we had, he gave us, okay, option 1, 2, 3, and 4. Option 3 was basically 80% of 30 million bonded and 20% reserve funds.
Makes sense. That's what I just didn't know, and that's the reason.
Well, it was give or take. I mean, it was close at it. It was worth the exact numbers. We did use that option.
Because I know you guys are doing the right thing by not depleting those reserves.
No, we do not wish.
If we deplete those reserves, then a rainy day comes along. We have a Eureka, Kansas with a natural disaster and destroy something. That money is not going to be there to help rebuild and do things. So I applaud you for not expending all the reserve money. And it seems as a taxpayer, you say, well, but that's why it's there. No, it's not there in my mind to deplete it 100%. You got to keep some of it. So I applaud you for doing that. I just didn't know how you guys made that determination, 80-20.
Yeah, so just one of the options. It really wasn't worded that way, but we transformed it into that. I'll put it that way.
So you put it before numbers people and they kind of bonding people and they.
Yes, they presented us how much would cost to bond, basically roughly 80%. And how much to bond 100% and how much to bond, you know what I'm saying? So it just made more sense to do the 80-20. We all agreed to that.
And I guess last thing I'd say is I was telling my wife on the way in here, in my mind, I'm just going to shoot you guys the way I believe. I think it's going to have a hard time passing if it goes on the ballot this November, just because there's not a whole lot of push county-wide to try to, and it's not because of lack of effort. I think maybe the method or something, have you guys considered like a citizens advisory group or something to try to support the sheriff and the county and going around to the communities to get information out to the citizens, something to maybe try to get more information out to people in order
That's
to.
where we're headed now.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff. But
We were doing that to begin with. I set up a committee from somebody from one person from every town.
Good.
And we'd actually had meetings and believed that everything was set up for the south end of town. When that got put on a sudden halt, then everything stopped. because if we don't have any place to put it, you can't answer questions just like this. People want to know 4 things. Where are you putting it? Who's paying for it? You know, how many people you're gonna have at it? You know, can't answer that if you don't have a place to build.
Tommy, it was sure, last thing I gotta say, is sure a punch in the gut when I seen that get stopped down on the south end, because when I talked to the city, when I started the process, when I was still in office, the sewer's there, the water, the electric, all the infrastructure's there. In fact, the person and I'm not gonna say names, but the words were used, well, hell, this is a no-brainer. Well, if it was a no-brainer then why the hell ain't it a no-brainer now? What changed? That's all I got to say about that.
Next is Bill Fry.
Hello, I'm Bill Fry. I have a lot of questions, and one is how did we know about this meeting tonight? And I'm asking in a positive way, is all I get here is rumors, and where did this meeting come up? I got a phone call today to come in here, and so I just want to know how the public, you say you want to get it out in the public, but let's don't limit it to just a few of the sheriff's department, and I have nothing against the sheriff's department, but what I see right now is this is a limited group of people doing things. So tell me how I was supposed to know about this meeting.
It was put out on social media. I don't think anybody was trying to limit anybody. It was trying to get things organized. And the paper only comes out, you got everything to the paper by Tuesday, I believe it is, to get it published so that you would know come Thursday. But there was not enough time to do that. And Tom can correct me if I'm wrong.
But that's where I'm
so
coming from.
This won't be the only one we have.
I know.
The plan would be to put it in the paper for them, and the next meeting will be, and this won't be the only one. This is not, we chose these people to be here. These people chose to be here themselves.
Because the way I see it is you're shoving it down our throat. And I
don't believe I'm
it really is. It really is, because I've dealt with these people and I know how you guys determine. And I'll bring in a good example of Gene Berry come to the city or the county commission meeting and the head of the hospital board and said, if we don't get new retirement homes built, we're going to close that one down in Waverly and the one in Burlington, and it was going to be done in 30 days. And you guys needed to build old folks homes or retirement homes. And what happened to that? Because the government was going to step in and shut us down. It was shoved down our throat. Why did that not happen? What happened to that? Do you remember that, Bob?
We didn't do it.
I know, but I'm just saying, that is exactly what's going on here. You're shoving it down our throat. And I'm trying to tell you is, I agree that you need a new jail, okay? What are you going to do with what's there? Is the sewer running from just the jail, or is it running from the whole courthouse through there? So if you do away with the jail there, is the sewer problem going to go away?
You can eliminate what's in the floor. That would be something that would be determined later, yes.
Okay, there we go again. We don't know. So you're shoving it down our throat. Now listen, I'm just being, the way I see it is, I agree with the jail deal and I agree with that. But yet you still have a sewer problem. I just want to know that. Everybody else wants to know that. If you really have that much of a problem, I do know you do with the jails. And I haven't been there, but I talk to people that work there and I understand and I believe in what they have to say. But you're going to have to spend a whole lot of money redoing the sewer. Well, you know, and I really think I read in the paper that your first place to build this was up by the hospital. Am I not correct?
It was a thought about location, yeah.
Yeah, it was come from your group study.
Yeah.
Okay, but all of a sudden that got dropped because Mr. Rogers wants it south of town. But you guys are telling us this is where the group study wants it now. That is not the first. They had 2 other sites. It was in the newspaper. So I'm listening to the newspaper, your public paper, your minutes, and all of a sudden now it gets changed. And then we're going from here clear out to the airport. But anyway, who was on that committee that started this? Was it just Randy Rogers and the county attorney?
I was on it.
Okay. So how did you get the public from like me that don't really believe in all this and spending all this money wildly that you guys don't even know what it's gonna cost. He says 20,000, he says 25, and I think you said 30 a while ago. And
But these are
we don't have no idea what it's gonna cost us. And if I went to the bank and operated like that, they'd laugh me out of town.
These are all estimated costs.
I know, you can't build something on estimated cost without hurting the taxpayers.
You know, that's why you put together bid documents and you send it out for bids, and then you know exactly what it costs you. But until then, until it's actually designed, you won't know what it's gonna cost you. As far as the sewer and existing jail, I believe that you can terminate a lot of those bathrooms that they're talking about that are causing them problems and reroute, and not even have to deal with those pipes that are in those concrete floors, just reroute it. It's because you're no longer using those facilities. So you can just turn it into storage, whatever you want to do. It don't have to be used.
Okay.
So as far as, yes, going up by the hospital was a thought about location.
And it was your company, I don't know what it was, but they said that was the #1 spot, and then it just got thrown out, and to
Well,
me,
it was determined by the architect and a few others that maybe there wasn't enough space there in case for future expansion like has been talked about. So the next viable spot would have been south at the industrial park.
okay, so.
Now, that has been, the city doesn't want to sell it. We're not gonna do any sort of eminent domain on anybody. And I'm sorry that it happened in 1988. I wasn't around in 1988.
So you guys core
I'm
drill
telling you,
down
we're not
there?
gonna do any eminent domain.
Are you core drilled down there?
Down south,
Yeah.
We were in the process of getting
We were in
ready
the
to when this got halted by the city.
Okay, so everybody didn't have their ducks in a row.
we
But,
were trying to get our ducks in a row. We weren't the ones that shot the first duck.
okay, so my proposal is to you, is another reason is you're hurrying up to get it on the ballot, and if you study politics, it's the best time to put it on the ballot, because nobody goes and votes. At this election, why don't you put it on a major one, take your time and do it right? And like I said, I am for the jail, but I am not for the judicial center, and I think 40 beds is plenty, and all these numbers they're putting out here is just grabbing out of the air. We haven't heard how much money this jail has taken in the last year. We heard that we spent 30,000, but we haven't heard what we got paid.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just being realistic about this whole thing.
Well,
And
I'm glad you came in. Thank you.
Bill, in my opinion, we're not forcing this down anybody's throat. That's the reason we're having these very special meetings to give everybody the opportunity to come and ask questions, voice their opinions. And when you get into bid projects, like I've been involved in quite a few of them, none this big. But when you get into bid projects, you've got some estimations of cost. And those estimations of cost can vary quite a bit to a contractor or 3 or 4 contractors get it set down. But, you know, to hold it off for, like I said, there's no way we're pushing down anybody. We're trying to get this information out as quickly as we can and as honestly as we possibly can. But if we wait for a major election is still 2 years away.
Right.
And to me, there's been a little bit of discussion on this jail for the last 3 years, a little bit. You know, it's been talked about, and now it's starting to come to head. But in my opinion, there's no way, but my intent, and I think I can speak with, that we're trying to push it down anybody's throat. That's the reason we're having these meetings to be explored. We're still exploratory to an extent.
right, so numbers are not there. We're already adding a gun range to it. What happened to the city dump out, or the county dump out here? Didn't you guys go out there and shoot?
Yes, sir.
So why is that not good enough anymore?
Expansion of the landfill.
Expansion, okay. So you used to go to Wolf Creek. What happened to that deal?
Against possibility.
Okay, but I'm just saying, you're adding stuff to it. You took what we needed a jail, and now you're trying to build this great big thing. And I don't feel we need it. And everybody's right about how much it's going to cost out at the airport. It's ridiculous. So all the, you know, your safety wise, you guys want to talk about, but it's going to be worse. And how much trouble do you have in the pod jails? You put 12 prisoners together, how much fighting do you have?
You're gonna have, just like you have when you have 2 people in a cell. There's
Okay,
fights
you
no matter
understand, you
what.
understand where I'm coming from. All I want
Absolutely,
is
sir.
true answers. And, you know, the hospital deal, they come in and borrowed money. Bob, you were one of them sitting on the commission. You told me they were gonna pay that money back. How much money did they pay back?
things in it back. But
How much?
We're drifting away from the jail.
I know, but I'm just saying.
I gotta limit these buddy to 10 minutes and,
Did you say that up front? There again, you forced it down my throat. Thanks a lot.
you're welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Next on the list is Stephanie Workington.
Hello, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Stephanie Workington. I live in Burlington. I am a 911 dispatcher for the sheriff's office. So there's no doubt in my mind that we need this. I'm for it. I would like it to stay Burlington just because I don't want to drive that far to go to work. But I live like 6 blocks from now. To me, the money's not an issue because I have reasonings for that. The reasonings I have is I've heard a lot of people say, why do we need a new jail? Because of safety concerns. We don't have inmates escape. Well, that's true. We don't have them escape a lot. You guys don't hear about the attempts, which is good. You guys don't need to hear about that. But we also don't have a lot of school shootings. Wolf Creek doesn't melt down on us on a routine basis. We train for that. We prepare for that. We've got cameras in the high school. The other schools are coming, I think. I don't remember. But for the purpose of school shooters, so we can track them. We don't want to be the people that wait until the tragedy happens to make the change. I'm looking at this as a staff member because my friends work in the jail. They're my family. Which brings me to my next point. Thankfully, most of you have not had to hear your jailer call for help as they're fighting someone in the hallway. And your officers are 20 miles away. Which, the reason I bring that up is in the pod, you are still gonna have to go hands-on when there's medical issues, when there's fights. You don't have to go hands-on just to walk them to their day room, walk them to the holding cell to wait for an ambulance to come. That's when a lot of this stuff happens. Or when your deputies are bringing someone to jail and they decide to fight them in the hallway. That's dangerous for the inmate, that's dangerous for the jailer, and it's dangerous for the officer. So you look at the cost of it, well, what happens if one of our people die because they went in to move somebody and that person was able to overtake them because of the safety issues? To me, it's a no-brainer. Buy the money for that so our people can be safe. Also, a lot of you haven't had to work by yourself in the dispatch center. Now, the dispatch center has a couple of bathrooms adjacent to it. Our headsets that connect us to the phone and the radio, they only reach so far. So we can only go, when we're by ourselves, we can only go to the men's bathroom because it's attached. When there's plumbing issues and both of those bathrooms are down, and this has happened, both of those bathrooms are down, the only bathroom is upstairs. You're working by yourself because people are sick, people are on vacation, you're short-staffed, whatever it may be. You go your 10, 8, 12-hour shift with no bathroom break. Do you guys want to do that? Right, you can. You can call, and that's what we have to do. We call a jailer down if they're double covered. We'll call an officer in, put them in the bathroom break. And they can run the radio, they can answer the phones. But a 911 dispatcher is much more than just answering your phones when 911 goes off. Those guys are trained to respond to the emergency going on based off the information that we gather. Just like I don't know how to do their job, they don't know how to do my job. So that's another reason we need adequate facilities for our employees to be able to use and not have to wait 12 hours or 10 hours just to go to the bathroom, especially if we're busy and we can't get away from them. I already kind of touched on the fact that you guys don't hear about the close calls we have with inmates planning to shank jailers. That one's happened. inmates trying to fight their way out, trying to get a key to get out. Someone said something about going electronically, which is what we have. We have electronic bans, like what Tom's got on his hand, that you have to scan, it allows you in. That's another tangible piece that a jailer can try to get, or an inmate can try to get off of our jailer, hurt him for, kill him for, just so he can get out. On the pod, like Tom said, they're enclosed, they can't get to them, it's a push of a button.
I know I'm not supposed to talk, but I was totally surprised yesterday when I went through the jail. The key they took out was just like the one Otis used to take out.
Yes, it is your
That key.
picturesque jail key.
Let himself in the jail cell. It's the same key.
Another thing I want to touch on is that the reason everyone's complaining about the size of it, we might not need 80 beds, we might be okay with 50. But in today's day and age, two of the main things that we deal with, COVID and mental health issues. Right now, we are not set up to deal with a mental health patient. If we get somebody who is having a mental health break, we have one room. And more often than not, we have more than one person that has mental health issues. We are not set up for that. And COVID, if one of our inmates contract COVID, we have to isolate them, have to go in quarantine, just like we do. Again, we have one room that we could really do that in, that if it's taken up by a mental health person. So those are other reasons to think about this and why it's a good thing, instead of just focusing on the money, the location. Yes, those are important, but for the 50 employees we have, 51 employees we have, this means so much more than having to drive 7 miles out of town to go to work, or having to spend more taxes. Like I said, I hope it stays in town. I think it needs to stay in town, but regardless of what, we need it. And those are just some other reasons that maybe some people weren't aware of to think of. That's it.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Two more names on the list. So just so you have a preview. Next on the list is Gary Hain. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Gary Hain from News Front. I think our number one thing we're concerned about is we need a new jail. But do we need a Cadillac? Well, will a Chevy do? Or will a Ford do? Why do we need a Cadillac? Sheriff said, I need a jail. I don't disagree with you. But what, it seems to me like we decided, oh, we need a new jail. Then our county attorney says, well, hey, I'd like a new office. Hey, I'd like a new courtroom. Why? We need a jail. Period. We don't need the little Cadillac. We don't need all the little friends. We need a jail. Cut it down. People who think 50 to 70 beds, what are we gonna be? Little El Dorado? You know, I realize we have to send our inmates out. We spent $30,000 last year. How many years can we send people out for $20 million? Come on, guys. Let's build a jail. Let's don't build a Cadillac. Let's build a jail. The courtroom's adequate. It might not be perfect. It might not be what our county attorney wants. His office might not be the best. I was a principal. I didn't like the stuff that I did, but I did my damn job. Let's build a jail at a reasonable price and get it done. That these people here are concerned about $20-some million for a jail. I'm telling you right now, the sheriff and the ex-sheriff, they can build, they'd be satisfied with a hell of a lot less. And you guys know that. He knows that. But we want this, we want that. Hey, we could get this jail, but let me hop in here. This would be a good time to do it. I've been down that road. It don't work, guys. Build a jail that's adequate, that will do the job. Leave the fringe stuff out. And you'd be surprised how many people get on the bandwagon. But the way you're going right now, you snowball and you know where. Now, if you want a jail, let's build a jail.
Keep your
Let's
voice
go.
down. You can keep your voice down.
Well, but hey, I'm in order for law. I'm not, all I'm saying is, let's build a jail. Let's don't build a Cadillac. Let's build a Chevy jail that does the job. And that's it. You'll be surprised at how many people will get behind. Because I think people realize we need one. Now, where you put it, that could be a problem. But we need a jail. A jail. We don't need a Cadillac. And that's where the problem's coming. You know, that price tag, people ain't gonna buy it. But we do need a jail. I agree. We do need a jail. But I don't think we need a little El Dorado. We need something adequate. We can farm our people out at 30,000, 50,000 a year. A lot of years. So think about that, guys. We build a jail. We need it. We definitely do. But we don't need a Cadillac.
In my opinion, Gary, we're not building a Cadillac.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
You know, the justice system, it's much, much better if everything is in one location.
I don't disagree.
There's no question on that. And in my opinion, this is not a Cadillac, the dollars we're looking at, which is still projectable. You know, in the other counties, it's done this in the past and in the near future, they're in this same somewhere in this same ballpark, and they're not Cadillacs. You know, that we're building something that will do the job right for our county. Because the county this represents a county, and it's a safe, you know, if we cut a lot of corners, we're gonna take some of the safety part out of it. And I know you don't want us to cut safety corners.
I know that.
I don't either.
But
we gotta reach some common ground.
But, you know, the courthouse, the courtroom don't need that. We go transport them before. We can argue and argue and argue, but it comes to a point, if you want it to pass, if you want it to go, you're gonna have to cut her down.
And I understand where you're coming.
Yeah.
But the less activity we have directly with inmates and officers.
I understand, but we don't need that. It's worked before.
Tomorrow.
But the housing is what is a problem.
But tomorrow may not work.
Hey, we might not, the way the government's going right now, we might not have to worry about it. We can argue about that. We have no idea what's gonna happen.
I'm not arguing.
No, but I'm just saying, we can argue back and forth what's going, but right now, it could come, we have no idea what's gonna happen in the next 2 years or 3. We might not have enough money to even support ourselves. But we need a jail, but we don't, and I disagree with you, it's a Cadillac. The mod system works, I agree, but we don't need to go courtroom, we don't need all that stuff. Build a jail for the housing. And you'd be surprised. I think a lot of people will change their mind. But the way it goes now, if I was gonna vote, I'd vote no. To be very honest. Thank you for your time.
Last name on the list is Wayne Humlicek.
That's kind of hard to follow.
Oh, Wayne.
I'm going Hamilton from Burlington. Everybody brought up the stuff that I wanted. I think we need a jail. I think it should be in the Burlington area, mostly because the location at the airport, other than the land cost, it would be absurd probably to pick that had you just had the whole county to pick from. And I don't think that you would have. So the answer, unless the land cost is so much, I would think that would be a negligible amount considering the whole project. Bill brought up the concern that I wanted to come ask you about, and that was the cost of refurbing the courthouse for other uses, once the jail and the judicial center is out of there. Because when you have all these water issues, particularly sewer issues, anytime you got water in a closed space, I've been down there in jail, not in jail, but in the area. And you get water in a closed, dark space like that, and you get mold and other things like that. So when you have other people you're close to that still may be working at the courthouse, I don't want them in mold. So where is the cost for the refurb or repurposing of the existing courthouse facilities coming from, and has it been considered before we look at the judicial center as a whole?
It has been considered, Dwayne, and I don't remember those exact numbers, but there was a number out there.
Just to
Is it part of the bond money?
Just to
Is it
refurbish the jail?
To refurbish the courthouse and the old jail.
repurpose the courthouse?
You know, I mean, there's been, it's like the rest of it, there's been ideas tossed around, thought about, this and that and the other. The final point is, do the Coffee County citizens support a new facility that is proposed? That's the final question. And has been studied to revamp the existing courthouse and that existing jail, yes. That's why I made the statement, those pipes in the floors can be abandoned because those restrooms that the inmates are using are no longer needed. So you can just abandon that and, you know, come overhead and start rerouting pipes instead of hammering out floors and this and that and the other for a lot less money.
Well, the building's still gonna be there, and it needs to be
Correct.
safe for the remainder of the
Mold.
inhabitants.
Pardon me?
The building would still be there, it needs to be safe for the remainder of the inhabitants. And so if it's, the sewer's tied, I know that point came up somehow, there's gonna be some expenses to repurpose. And I was just curious about where that was coming from, and had it been considered where it was gonna come from? Or whether it was part of the bond money for the new judicial center.
No, it's not part of the bond money for the new judicial center.
So food for thought. Thank
That's
you.
one of those deals, Wayne, you know, we're kind of outgrowing the courthouse a little bit with employees finding space for all employees, probably gradually have more employees in years. You know, it's one of those deals where you could almost classify it as work in process. As the demand comes to improve locations, you know, maybe do it on 3 or 4 year project. Something wouldn't have to be done now.
Okay.
But
Thank
over,
you.
my idea is maybe a little bit over time in the work process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got just 2 questions for my wife asked. I'm not on the list, I just got it. Okay.
That's Judy Stoops.
Judy?
You come up and
I think you all know me, I'm Judy Stuckey. 2 things that I was been concerned about, I'm not in favor of it being clear out of the airport, just for the simple things, reasons that everybody else has said. But it was my understanding when they bought that land for the airport, they bought all of that full mile into there for future expansions of the airport. Now, I know it's far-fetched that we've already expanded the runway once. There could be a time when maybe we want a full mile of their landing strips and so forth. Secondly, I'm not really in favor of pulling the courtroom out of the courthouse. There's so many other times when people have to go to court that doesn't involve prisoners and so forth. But what is the availability or the chance of doing, I don't know what you call it, Zoom meetings? I mean, you've got a place in the jail that's just strictly for communications with the courtroom. Somebody, you don't even take a prisoner out of the jail. Has that been done? Hasn't it been done in other places?
Sure. And
Is that a possibility?
and it's been done here during COVID too. We have it set
Well,
up.
I mean, anytime, whether you didn't take a prisoner out, just because of COVID, but anytime. If
We have had some violent inmates that we felt it was
best
more
just to
safe to keep
them
them
locked up in
in
a cell room.
than walk them down a hallway, yes ma'am, to the public.
To me, that would be one way of incorporating the jail, connecting it to the courthouse. And I know there's There's other reasons that some of you, need to go back for, but those are the two questions that I hadn't heard addressed. If that was a possibility of having telecommunications between the jail and the courtroom.
Judy, something to think about here, just to throw this out, is, I'll say here, Judge Wine is a great judge. We have a great chief judge here. And Judge Wine wants to see people in his courtroom. He has a real problem of doing that visual. It's got to be done in some situations. We know that. So we have it set up, for example, in the jail where an inmate, can get on that video and it can be piped into the courtroom. We've had attorneys saying, if you think he's bad enough that you're not taking him in there, well, I'm not going in that cell with him. So there's a give and take here of what we do, but it can't be done all the time. But yes, we do that.
And ma'am, maybe to follow up on that. So I've been dealing with Zoom court since COVID started. And we had Zoom court that was published here in Coffee County and several other counties. And we still have Zoom court for some types of cases. But the problem is, one, Zoom court stalls the process because there is something to be said about coming in and having to sit in the courtroom. We have people who don't have shirts on, who are asleep, who are working, and we don't get anything done because they don't contact their attorneys. But the system stalls out. We have a backlog of cases because of Zoom right now. The other issue is people have a due process right to be present, and we potentially create appellate issues if we do plea sentencing certain types of hearings by Zoom. Sometimes, as the sheriff said, we don't have a choice, but the preference is to have people in person. Judge Wine will not do any felony case by Zoom. With rare exception, and he's very uncomfortable if we do have the rare exception, and you have to go through, and there has to be an additional commentary by the judge to make sure the person understands what rights they're waiving by not being in person. I've been opposed to Zoom court since it occurred. COVID dictated that. We have a backlog of cases because of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank
you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Your name?
Don Drum.
Don Drum.
I live out here on Oxon Road. I'd just like to ask the commission if you really expect us to vote to give you $25 million with no location. I'm not going to give you a blank check not knowing where you're going to spend that $25 million. And the other thing is, I'm under the impression that government is compromised. We should compromise. I think you guys have a lot of work to do to come to a compromise to please him. I know he does want some bells and whistles like a shooting range, but we got to come to a compromise. And I think you should repeal your motion, put it on the ballot, and do your job and find with compromise, and put something on the ballot that will pass. I'm with Sheriff Rogers, or ex-Sheriff Rogers, that I don't think it'll pass the way you got it on the ballot. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks, sir.
Anybody else?
What would a special election cost if it was to be done at a separate time? I know there's costs associated with a special election. How does that work?
That's an election representative who can tell you that.
It costs more than you realize.
Yes, it's not, there's a cost to it.
So the commission already has it set to be on the ballot in November right now. They voted on it. It's going to be on there at this point.
As of today.
That could change next commission meeting. Possibly.
That's their decision.
Possibly. Okay.
And it'll go on with a location to be determined?
So the hope is to figure out the location, and that is unfortunately one of the elephants in the room, right? How do you know what's going to happen? And that's a very fair
That's what I
question.
said. I'm not about to vote without a location. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Sir, you raise your hand?
Yeah, that's just an idea. How about taking the parking lot behind the courthouse, putting an overhead building on top of it, and use the the garage for vehicles for the employees, build a jail up above, keep the courthouse at the courthouse.
You know, to me, and just my opinion, it seems to be okay that this present jail that is not that secure is okay right next to the lower elementary and a new daycare center, but it's not okay in your backyard or or a mile and a half from your house.
And my wife is a teacher, and she's happy that that place is right there next door because of shape and Columbine and all those. She's happy to have, she told me that straight out. You know,
My only
everybody-
concern-
What about the inmate? My wife works there. She's happy that they can respond like that, not 10 miles out of town.
And I get that philosophy, I do, but on the flip side of that is if he does get out and he's got a jailer's gun or whatever, you know, I told myself I wouldn't bring it up, but I did.
Because even if they do escape with it right next to the elementary school, that doesn't mean that the officers are gonna be right there at the elementary school. They can still be 20 miles away.
So the issues that Tom's talking about, let's say building behind the school. These are just issues that in other meetings people have brought up. So we're not saying, I mean, we're wanting the public's answers. We will build what you tell me we can build. What the county, you tell the county commissioners what we built and we'll make it work. But when we say, you know, hey, what about building behind where the school's at? That's just, we're trying to tell you, that's been brought up at other meetings. So again, it's not something that we're saying, oh yeah, we want to move it because it's by the school. It's just been brought up in prior meetings.
I think also it's important that the folks know this. One of the reasons why we need to move is we need to get everybody together. You're suggesting that our deputies are right there waiting, and even though, they may occasionally be there, their offices are not there. We had to move them out years ago. The deputies have to go down to the annex now. All patrol deputies, all patrol, actions are taking place blocks away from the courthouse because we don't have room. We had to remove a bathroom so that we could put in another administrative office. We have an office inside the jail that has bars on the door because we don't have room for another office in there. So they took up a holding cell so that we could put in an office for. I'm kind of going off track here a little bit, but the idea is we have expanded as far as we can expand. Where we're at, you don't have, we're not a fire station. When we have a call come in, we don't have everybody flying out from the sheriff's office. Now, Tom and I and several will probably be there, and that's where we have to respond from. Normally, our deputies are not hanging out there. So the idea that we're responding from there to get to Leroy or elsewhere, that doesn't work that way either. And the sheriff can tell you it's always worked that way for us. I mean, that's just the nature of the business. So there are some things that I wish we could give you the entire experience of what brought us to the idea of why do we need to bring the courts with the jail? The courts need to come with the jail simply because I can't house 11 inmates who are due for court that day in a bus. I have to put them somewhere. So if I'm moving them from a jail to a court that's away, I have to have a facility there at the court to put them in. So what you've done is you've created a situation where you still have to refurbish the jail so that you have a place to hold inmates while they wait for jail or court. You try to solve one problem and remove another and you create another. So what we did is we're not trying to create a Taj Mahal. If we're going to make this work and make it work for 30 or 40 years before it needs to be revamped, this is the idea that has to go in place. Now, the sheriff is stated what we've talked about, and that is we're going to get what we get. We understand that. We're having these meetings so you understand why we got to where we're at and why we have the idea that we do. It's not because, oh boy, we want neat offices. There is a use for this. So anyway, I just wanted to address a few things that I'd heard tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone else had their hand up? Ma'am?
I'm hearing a lot of concern about this being by the school. Tom Hugan, you grew up here, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Bob Zresic, you grew up in Burlington. The high school used to be right to the east of the jailhouse. The grade school was to the south. That's never been an issue.
Hopefully it never
Don
becomes
Brown
an
has
issue.
he's got a good point. We've heard a lot of information tonight, but we haven't heard a lot of concrete information. There's a lot of speculation. We don't know this, we don't know that. I don't speak auditor terms. I don't know this. I can't tell you tax rate. I can't tell you. We're hearing a lot of information, but we're not hearing a lot of concrete information that we can feel comfortable going to a voting booth and voting on. And I don't feel like, I know we need a jail. I'm totally in favor of that. But I'm not in favor of voting on something that you guys don't have the facts to. That you can't tell me what it's gonna cost. That you can't ensure that in your new facility, he's not gonna take his shirt off and put it in a stool and flood the basement. You can't tell me that he's not gonna flood the pod below him. So that's not really an issue. Because that's not something you're gonna be able to control.
Yes, ma'am, I can. For the new
No,
facility.
you can't. If he's taking that shirt off and put it in the stool and flush the stool,
Yeah.
you can't stop that stool from
Yes, I
overflowing.
can, with a push of a button. And the new pod system,
But how are you gonna watch 70 beds at one time?
because ma'am, you're sitting right here, and you've got 70 people standing around you. When the flood starts, when they start flooding the cell, all he does is reach over that computer button and push water stop on that cell, and it shuts everything down. That's the way these new systems are set up. They can
But
shut
you
water,
can't watch
electric.
every one of them rooms at one time.
No, ma'am, and you've got a multiple set of cameras on the computer sitting right next to him, next to his alarm system. I mean, it's unbelievable. We went around to other facilities to look at it.
Systems that have cameras. That's got thousands of cameras in a building.
Yes, ma'am.
And you can't watch every one of them cameras.
No,
at
ma'am,
one
you
time.
can't. Can I tell you that it's never gonna flood? No, I'm not. But can I tell you that this eliminates 90% of it? That's what we're being told.
And you're saying 90%.
That's what they're telling us, ma'am. We asked the same
And
questions.
that's based off from what?
That's based on Eric Smith and I driving to Wyoming, driving to Lyon County, driving all over, talking to other entities, talking to other sheriffs that are having them built, why they built them, and just getting information. We're trying to get information to be able to give to you, and that's what we're told.
Well, like I said, I'm not secure. I don't feel secure going to a voting booth with the information I heard tonight.
That's why we're here, ma'am.
That, you know, if I had to vote tonight, I'd say you guys are dead in the water.
That's why we're here.
So when you get some facts and you're ready to talk to the public, I'd invite you to do that. And I'd invite you to put the message out that you're having the meeting before the day of the meeting. That's right. That was poor planning on somebody's part. And it was just by accident I even heard about it.
It was listed in the Coffee County Republican, correct me if I'm wrong, on September 2nd on page 11?
Yes. But there was a meeting tonight?
Yes. But again, it was page 11 and it was titled something totally different than what's being discussed here on the front of the paper. So I think we need to also look at how our paper presents the information to us as well.
But like I said, I'd be better off, I would be more satisfied voting one way or the other if you guys had your information and not just speculation.
But how would you prefer, just out of curiosity? We put it out on Facebook, we put it out on several different sites. How would you prefer that it go
Yeah,
out?
we have marquees all over Coffee County. We have marquees sitting everywhere. City of New Strong's got a marquee right there at the office. You know, put up these, there's signs everywhere.
I think that's what they're, I mean, that's a good idea. I think that's the kind of stuff they're wanting to hear.
Absolutely.
They asked me, and I said,
Just
"Do you
one
have a
comment,
social media
gentlemen.
presence?"
If you don't come up with another plan, you're wasting your time. Because this $27 million guy, it won't go. I'm telling you, people I've talked to, have talked to me. I'm on the city council, New Strong, and you're dead. I hate to say it, and I agree. We need a jail. We need a new one. But if you don't come up with a compromise, yeah, I can't say a Cadillac.
We want to thank everybody for attending. Special meetings are rare. This is the third one in the last 20 years. There was a lot of effort that was put in behind the scenes by this man right here, Brad Schadmeyer, to set up the electronics so that this meeting could be live streamed. So those who could not attend could view it, and so it would be recorded and placed with the other meetings. We also need to thank and recognize the jail staff who are here, who I asked to stand up, because that is one of the most thankless jobs in the entire county. Thank you for coming out. This was so that we could be, not only could we inform you, but we could be informed of what issues you have. And we're gonna take what you passed on, and we're gonna move forward with that, and we will have a dialogue and figure out what the next steps are with the county. Good job, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for being here.
We're 9:21.